Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to try to make sense of the world of .NET,
Right.
which can be pretty overwhelming, even if you've been working with it for a while.
Definitely.
I mean, there's .NET Framework, there's .NET Core, there's all these different versions. It's kind of like being in a giant forest and not knowing which way to go.
Yeah, like where do you even begin?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today we're going to take a deep dive and really try to untangle this .NET web,
We'll figure out what all the key elements are, how they relate to each other.
and most importantly, why you should even care.
Exactly.
So to do that, we're going to be looking at some really interesting excerpts from what seems to be a book about C# and .NET.
It's got a lot of great insights. Definitely worth a deep dive.
Awesome. So to kick things off, let's talk about the challenge that sort of led to the rise of .NET Core.
Okay.
And it all starts with the .NET framework.
Right. So the .NET framework, you can think of that as kind of the foundation of the .NET world. For years, it was the main platform for building Windows applications.
Right.
In fact, it's installed on over 1 billion computers.
1 billion computers.
Yeah. Huge, huge user base.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, that's got to make it really hard to make changes without breaking things for people, right?
Absolutely. It's like, imagine trying to renovate a skyscraper while people are still living and working inside.
Yeah, you can't just start tearing down walls.
Exactly. You gotta be incredibly careful.
So the .NET framework, it's massive, it's a bit inflexible,
Yeah.
and then there's this thing called the GAC.
Right, the Global Assembly Cache, or GAC for short.
So what is that?
Basically, it's a shared space where all the .NET framework applications store and access their shared libraries.
Okay.
Sounds good in theory.
Right. Efficient?
Efficient, yeah. But it can lead to these version conflicts.
Oh.
Like, it's kind of like, having roommates who all share the same kitchen,
Yeah.
but nobody's really communicating about who's using what ingredients.
It's going to get messy.
Exactly. Things can get really messy really fast.
So we've got this massive kind of inflexible .NET framework,
Yeah.
and then this potential for conflict in the GAC. I imagine that caused some serious headaches for developers.
Oh, definitely. It posed a lot of challenges, especially as technology kept evolving.
Right.
Developers needed something that was more adaptable, more cross-platform, something that could move faster.
And that's where .NET Core enters the picture.
Exactly. That was the solution they came up with.
So .NET Core is like the answer to all of these problems that were cropping up.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, so how do they actually go about creating .NET Core?
So they basically took the .NET framework and they streamlined it.
Okay.
They refactored a lot of the code. They removed components that weren't really considered core.
So it was like a Marie Kondoing of the .NET framework.
Exactly. They got rid of all the things that didn't spark joy.
I love that analogy.
Right.
So they did some serious spring cleaning.
Definitely.
But was it just about the technical side of things, or was there a bigger shift happening?
Well, I think it was both.
Okay.
They weren't just fixing technical issues. They were also trying to make .NET more appealing to new developers.
So attract a new generation of coders.
Exactly. And it seems to have worked
Yeah.
because the text actually says that something like 40% of .NET Core users are new to the platform.
Wow. So, okay, we've got this established .NET framework,
Yeah.
and then we've got this newcomer, this .NET Core, which is attracting all these new developers. It's like a tale of two .NETs.
It really is.
But wait, there's also this thing called Blazor WebAssembly that's mentioned.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Well, what is that all about?
So Blazor WebAssembly, technically it's part of .NET Core,
Okay.
but it deserves a mention because it's this really cool way to build interactive web UIs using C# instead of JavaScript.
Oh, wow. That sounds pretty revolutionary.
Yeah, it's still relatively new, but it's already making a big impact in the web development world.
That's awesome. Okay, so are there any other major players in this .NET landscape that we should be aware of?
Well, before we get into that, let's talk about versions.
Okay.
Because that can be a real headache,
Yeah.
even for experienced developers.
Versions, yeah. I could see how that could get confusing quickly.
It definitely can.
So what do we need to know about .NET versioning?
So the text points out this really important difference between how they version the .NET runtime and the .NET SDK.
Right.
The .NET runtime uses what's called semantic versioning, which is, a logical way to increment the version number based on the type of changes.
Makes sense.
But the .NET SDK versioning, it's a little bit more complex.
Oh, no.
And it doesn't always line up perfectly with the runtime version.
I'm already getting confused.
Yeah, it can be tricky. But the text actually has this really helpful table
Oh, good.
that shows the different scenarios.
Okay.
So, like, for example, it shows how a simple bug fix in the SDK might just bump the patch number,
Right.
but a change to the runtime could mean a whole new major version.
I see. So you really have to pay attention to both the runtime and the SDK versions
Exactly.
because they're not always in sync.
Yeah, no.
Got it. So always keep an eye on both versions. Okay, so we've talked about .NET Framework, .NET Core versions, and Blazor. There's this term that keeps popping up that I'm curious about. Modern .NET. What exactly does that mean?
So modern.NET, it's kind of like an umbrella term.
Okay.
It refers to the latest evolution of the whole .NET ecosystem.
So it's like the cutting edge of .NET.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So what are some of the key principles of modern .NET?
Well, it's all about modularity,
Okay.
flexibility,
Mhm.
and open source collaboration.
Okay.
Think of it like, those Lego blocks you used to play with.
Yeah.
You can pick and choose the components you need and build whatever you want.
So modern .NET is all about customization, having the freedom to build what you need.
Exactly.
I love that. But is that just, to be trendy, or are there actual practical benefits to this approach?
Oh, no, it's not just about being trendy. It
Uh-huh.
actually has some really big advantages. One of the biggest is performance. Oh, interesting.
Microsoft has put a lot of effort into making modern .NET as fast and efficient as possible,
So things run more smoothly.
much more smoothly.
That's got to be a huge win for developers.
It is. Nobody wants to wait around for their code to compile.
No, for sure.
So yeah, performance is a big one.
Okay, so we've got .NET Core, we've got Blazor, we've got this modern .NET with modular design and performance improvements.
Right.
It seems like .NET has gone through quite a transformation,
It definitely has.
but it sounds like some things had to be left behind in order to achieve this transformation.
That's true, yeah.
So what kind of things are we talking about here?
So in order to make .NET truly cross-platform
Yeah.
and to really embrace the principles of modern .NET,
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft had to make some tough choices.
Oh, okay.
Some of the Windows-specific components,
Yeah.
like Windows Forms and WPF, they didn't really fit into this new vision.
So they got left out.
Well, they weren't included in .NET Core by default.
But, and this is important, you can still run these legacy applications with .NET Core on Windows.
So it's not like they completely abandoned them.
Not at all.
They're not part of the core anymore.
Right, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So it sounds like developers have more options now,
Definitely.
and Microsoft is trying to make the transition as smooth as possible.
Yeah, they're providing ways for developers to migrate their applications and use their existing skills.
So it's not a harsh, jump into the deep end.
No, it's more like a gradual transition.
That's good to hear. Well, this has been a really great overview of the .NET landscape.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But before we move on, is there anything that's really resonating with you so far? Anything that's particularly striking?
What stands out to me is how much the evolution of .NET mirrors the larger trends we're seeing across the entire tech industry.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, this move towards open source,
Yeah.
the growing importance of cross-platform compatibility, this need for speed and agility, these are all things that are really shaping the way we develop software today.
And .NET is right there in the thick of it.
Exactly. It's a great example of how a platform can adapt and thrive in this constantly changing environment.
It's like .NET has gone through a metamorphosis,
I like that, yeah.
from a caterpillar to a butterfly.
Beautiful analogy.
But speaking of transformations, this all raises an important question.
Yeah.
What does this shift mean for the future of .NET development? What does it mean for the developers who are working with it today or maybe thinking about getting into it?
Right. How does this impact people in the real world?
Exactly. That's what we'll be unpacking in part 2 of our .NET deep dive, so stay tuned.
Yeah, it's a really important question. And it's something that a lot of developers are thinking about these days.
Yeah.
How do we make sense of all these changes and what do they mean for the future?
Yeah, and if we kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it seems like the future of .NET is all about, embracing innovation and being agile,
Absolutely.
giving developers the tools to create solutions for all sorts of platforms.
Right. It's not just about Windows anymore.
Right, exactly. Cloud-based systems, mobile apps.
The Internet of Things, you name it.
So .NET is breaking free from those Windows-only chains and becoming truly global.
Exactly. And with all these performance improvements we talked about,
Yeah.
and the move towards open source, I think .NET is in a really good position to attract even more developers.
That's exciting. I mean, more minds, more perspectives, that can only lead to more innovation, right?
Absolutely. The more the merrier.
But I'm also thinking about the developers who are, heavily invested in the .NET framework.
Right.
What does this shift mean for them? I feel like there could be some tension there.
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
There's definitely going to be a period of transition as people adapt to this new world.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that Microsoft hasn't completely abandoned the .NET framework.
Right. They haven't just pulled the rug out from under everyone.
No, not at all.
They're providing ways for people to migrate their application,
Exactly.
to leverage their existing skills in this new environment.
Right.
And like we talked about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
being able to run legacy Windows forms and WPF applications with .NET Core on Windows.
Yeah, that's huge.
So it's not this harsh, sudden shift. It's more of a gradual evolution.
Exactly, a more gentle approach.
And then there's also the .NET community,
Right.
which is so passionate and committed.
Yeah, they're incredible.
We talked about those open source efforts to bring features like WCF to .NET Core.
Mm-hmm.
That really shows how dedicated they are to making this transition as smooth as possible for everyone.
Absolutely. They're not leaving anyone behind.
It's about building bridges, not burning them.
Exactly.
I'm sure everyone can benefit from the progress that .NET is making.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And that spirit of collaboration, that's what's going to drive the future of .NET.
I-
Developers working together, sharing their knowledge, pushing the boundaries.
That's what it's all about.
So we've explored the past, the present. We've even gotten a glimpse into the future of .NET.
It's been quite a journey.
But as we start to wrap things up, what's your biggest takeaway from all of this? What's the one thing you really want our listeners to remember?
For me, it's the resilience of .NET,
But-
It's come such a long way from its Windows-centric roots.
Yeah.
It's embraced cross-platform compatibility, open source,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still going strong, still evolving.
Like a tech chameleon, constantly changing and adapting.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it so exciting to be a .NET developer today.
I agree.
There's this sense of momentum, this sense of progress.
It's contagious. Yeah.
And that's what we really wanted to share with our listeners today, right?
Definitely.
It's not just about understanding the technical details.
Mhm.
It's also about appreciating the journey,
Right.
the challenges, the victories, the potential.
The whole story.
So as we come to the end of part 2 of our .NET deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question.
Okay. Hit me.
We've seen how much .NET has changed in just a few short years.
It's been remarkable.
So what new challenges and opportunities do you think will emerge as technology continues to advance at this incredible pace?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
The only constant is change, right?
Right.
And .NET is no exception.
But with its strong foundation, its amazing community, and its dedication to innovation,
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt that .NET will continue to thrive and empower developers to build incredible things.
I completely agree.
Well said. Well, that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive into the world of .NET.
We'll be back soon with part 3.
So stay tuned. Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see how .NET has evolved over the years. I mean, from those early days as a Windows-only framework to what it is today.
Right.
This powerful, versatile platform that can pretty much do it all.
It really can.
And it's adapted to the changing needs of developers and all the demands of this crazy, fast-paced tech world we live in.
It definitely has.
And it's a testament to the people who created it and and the community that's grown up around it.
Mhm.
Speaking of the community,
Yeah.
that's another key takeaway from our deep dive. I mean, the .NET community is a big reason why .NET is so successful today.
Absolutely.
It's constantly pushing boundaries, sharing knowledge, and contributing to its ongoing evolution.
Yeah, I mean, the collaborative spirit is it's really inspiring.
It is.
Developers from all over the world are coming together to build new tools, create innovative solutions, and just, support each other on this journey.
It's what makes the .NET ecosystem so vibrant and dynamic.
For sure.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into .NET,
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
We've seen how .NET has embraced change, right? It's transformed itself to meet the demands of this rapidly evolving tech world.
It's a real chameleon.
It is.
Constantly adapting.
So what does this tell us about the importance of adaptability, not just for platforms like .NET,
Right.
but for developers themselves?
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
I mean, in a world where technology is constantly shifting, right?
Yeah.
And new challenges are popping up every day.
All the time.
The ability to adapt is essential for success.
I couldn't agree more.
So whether you're a seasoned .NET developer or just starting out, embracing a mindset of continuous learning
Right. Always be learning.
and being willing to explore new approaches.
Yeah, step outside your comfort zone.
That's going to be key to navigating this exciting but often unpredictable world of software development.
Yeah. It's a wild ride for sure.
It is.
But it's a fun one.
It is. It's a fun one.
If you're willing to embrace the chaos.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that learning is a lifelong journey, right?
Definitely.
Especially in tech.
Yeah, you never stop learning in this field.
And with .NET, which is, well, it's always evolving. There's always something new to discover, something new to explore.
It keeps things interesting.
It does.
That's for sure.
So, to all of you, our amazing listeners,
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of .NET.
We hope you enjoyed it.
We hope you learned something new, gained a fresh perspective, and maybe even had a few laughs along the way.
Yeah, we try to have some fun with it.
We do. We do.
It's not all serious business, right?
No, not at all. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the ever-evolving world of technology.
That's it. That's the message.
That's the message. See you next time.